Heinrich Schliemann's life had been one long love affair with the legend of Troy. It had taken 4 years to excavate the ruin he thought was Troy. Now, as he walked its ancient pavements, he believed he was following the path Homer had taken so long ago. Schliemann seeing, as through Homer's eyes, the skilled Trojan craftsmen at work in their stalls. Touching a dish that might have been set before Helen, the hostage princess who spawned 10 years of war. Admiring a lion's head carved in crystal. What great warrior might have carried it as a charm into battle? Schliemann could place on his own hand a ring made 30 centuries ago. Restore a brush whose bristles had turned to dust in the age of gods who walked with men. Still, Schliemann was not satisfied. He had in fact discovered 9 cities. He had no way of knowing for sure which one was the city of his dreams. Some early inhabitants imported bronze cast in ingots the shape of ox hides. There were ship's anchors of chiseled stone and ship's cook stoves of bronze. These Schliemann found in the ruin he called Troy too. But was this Homer's Troy? The answer was obscured by evidence of a great catastrophe. Violence more terrible than war had seared the very masonry of the walls. Jewelry was fused into shapeless blobs of metal. The whole countryside must have been laid waste by the disaster. Those who survived lived in squalor, the floors of their huts built on compacted garbage. If nothing else, Schliemann had unearthed a monument to the tenacity of man. Fire and sword had raged. Again and again, a city of the living had been raised on a city of the dead. Schliemann numbered the ruins from 1 for the oldest to 9 for the most recent. He assumed his objective was among the older ruins, possibly Troy too. Yet in Troy 6, he found massive walls that could have been the ones described by Homer. If they were the walls that hid Helen from the armies of her betrayed husband, it would be easy to see why the battle raged 10 years. It all seemed to fit Homer's description. A city fashioned by the gods. Yet the design of houses in Troy 6 was remarkably similar to those of the more ancient second city. A major difference among the various ruins seemed to be evidence of the increasing influence of outside cultures. By the time of Troy 6, newcomers from the north were introducing a completely new kind of pottery. The other arts were also affected by the immigrants. Alexander the Great was a latecomer to Troy, but among the first to build an altar to the old gods. From inscriptions, it is clear Alexander read Homer as fact. More years passed, and the Romans became masters of the Ionian coast. The poet Virgil took up in Latin where Homer left off in Greek, embellishing the story and giving it new credibility. Rome made Troy a sacred city. Emperors came to worship and be entertained. Augustus even considered making Troy the capital of his empire. Through it all, minstrels kept alive Homer's poem of glory. This was the world Heinrich Schliemann felt he had rediscovered. But was he seeing only what he wanted to see? So complete was Schliemann's dedication to Homer's Troy that he had taken a young Greek woman to be his bride. He thought she had Helen's blood coursing through her veins. And in a way, All this effort had been intended to restore her heritage. The greatest prize he had not been able to give her. Yet as he was about to give up, Schliemann made his most fantastic discovery. The glint of metal had caught his eye. Schliemann ordered his wife to send the workers away. Sophia was confused, but she had come to trust her husband's uncanny instincts. She did as she was told.
Paydos, gidebilirsiniz. Kocamın yaş günü bugün. Hey, Paydos.
In 4 years, Schliemann's men had moved 325,000 cubic yards of earth. Now, he was moving alone, deep into the excavation of the ancient second city. 28 feet down was the lower level of the wall Schliemann identified with Homer's Palace of Troy. It was here he had seen the flash of treasure. Schliemann had chanced everything for his dream. Even with all he'd accomplished, scholars still considered him a fraud or a madman. Now, he knew they would have to believe him. The treasure of Troy was surely only inches from his grasp. Then, his fingers touched it. There were 31 large objects of beaten gold. Had this once adorned Helen, daughter of the gods? The workmanship was unmistakable. Surely this was all the proof the world would need. The hoard included 9,000 small pieces, rings, buttons, and charms. It was wealth beyond imagining. More important, it seemed that a lifetime's quest had finally been realized. In spite of promises to share the treasure with the Turkish government, Schliemann smuggled most of it out of the country. He held onto it long enough to dress Sophia in splendor. Somehow, Schliemann knew he had fulfilled his destiny and hers by finding the lost treasure of Troy. The collection eventually found its way to the Berlin Museum. Schliemann would go on to other triumphs in archaeology. The Trojan treasure, however, would vanish. In the closing days of World War II, the Americans and the Russians marched on Berlin from opposing flanks. The museum fell under Russian control, but the treasure was already gone. Someone may have hidden it from the bombardment, then died without revealing the secret of its location. It's possible the Nazis stole it for their own use in the headlong flight from the advancing Allies. No one really knows. Happily, perhaps, Schliemann didn't live to see the day that the prize he struggled so hard to win would vanish again without a trace. Little has changed in Turkey in the 100 years since Heinrich Schliemann came here to play out his dream of finding Troy. Caravans still follow trade routes that were ancient even in Homer's day. Old men still sit in the shade and tell stories. It is the custom here, and was so long before Homer's time. Tragedy and disaster are also familiar in this fabled land. In 1976, an earthquake killed hundreds of people and left thousands homeless. There was no warning, just sudden and savage destruction. A dazed and heartbroken people began to rebuild, even as they mourned their dead. Modern archaeologists believe the same fate overtook ancient Troy. That around 1300 BC, a violent earthquake leveled the mighty city. Before the city could be rebuilt, barbarians attacked from the north and put the survivors to the sword. Perhaps we can be forgiven for preferring to believe that Troy met its end gloriously and for the sake of love.